was awesome.
That was awesome.
You guys are awesome.
No, you're awesome.
No, you are awesome.
Sir, you are awesome. Seriously.
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
Everything is awesome.
Welcome to this week's edition of Everything is Awesome. I am your host, Kevin. This is the show where we sit down and talk to awesome people about awesome things. And yes, you're hearing this in 2025, nearly 9 months since our last episode. We're back. Yes. Everything is Awesome has had such a turbulent life in the almost 9 years that this show has existed, which is, a good portion of the I think I'm going into 18 years of podcasting this summer, something like that. So this show has existed for about half the time that I've been podcasting, and the episode count doesn't match that, and a lot of that has to do with my mental health, and what I've realized in the last few months is that I miss this show dearly, and I can't let a pile of episodes that I got behind on editing stop me from posting them. I can't let that stop me from creating this show, especially when I started having some really deep conversations within this show that you'll eventually hear, that were things that aren't necessarily awesome. I like to think of things with a positive spin, and that's why the show exists. Everything is awesome, but I think there's room for the things that aren't so awesome, and that might actually help with the mental health. So, I've been, as I do things like Avatar: The Last Airbender, a podcast that I do with Mike D'Angelo from Tellist. You've heard him on the show many of a time. As I sit there and do that show and talk about Avatar: The Last Airbender, I'm completely new to that show. He's experienced with the IP. As I sit here and record other shows, like we'll get him next year, a Philly sports podcast that I do with JJ Tiles and Charlie Lancaster. We sit around and talk about Philly sports, Philly culture. I really realize that I miss this show a lot. Those things really kind of tap into sides of my personality, sides of my interests that I don't get to express too often. But ultimately, I love to talk. I love to talk to people. I love to learn what people do. I love to learn, how they interact with the world. I love to just have a conversation with them. And sometimes it's about the thing they do, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's goofy about Batman, Kevin Smith, something silly like that. And sometimes it's serious about things like transgender rights, Project 2025, and all these other things. This is a very long-winded way of me saying that I'm going to do my best to not let the mental health get in my way of getting Everything is Awesome out there every week. We're not going to be a show that airs 52 episodes a year. I take holidays off. I usually take birthdays off for my family. And I've also moved towards taking summers off. Now, what that means for this show is likely airing between normally September-ish and mid-June-ish. And then maybe a summertime special. We're not there yet. Let's look in front of us. Today is January 6th when you're listening to this. I'm recording this January 1st at 1:21 a.m., literally barely an hour and a half into the new year. So let's just baby steps. It's January 6th. We're sitting here with Steve Cooper, a wonderful man who is not only over that 1,000 episode mark, he's close to, I think, 1,030 episodes. CooperTalk.net is where you can find him, or the Coop Tank on YouTube. Let's sit back and listen to Steve Cooper, who is a comedian originally from the Philadelphia area. He moved to LA. He's back. And we just talk, having great, honest conversation about podcasting, about Philly, East Coast versus West Coast. and more right here on Everything is Awesome, only on awesomepodcast.com.
Facebook, it's all over. There's so many things going on Facebook, and I'm one of those people. I have a lot of friends. I'm cutting it down. Like when I was in LA, I wanted to get like 5,000 friends because But now I'm like, I don't even know half these people. And sometimes I'll sit there and I'll be like hanging out, and I'll see some stupid comment from someone I know. Then I'll look at our mutual friends and I'll go down the list and I'll go, I don't even know this person. I'll take people out. So I honestly, I think I'm at 4,300 now. I was used to be at 5,000. I would be fine with like 1,500. Just people I know from high school and college, when I lived in Vegas, when I lived in LA, and comedians and some podcasters, but I don't see the whole thing. So I guess the podcast, that page wasn't showing up on my feed much.
Right.
And I never really contributed to it much, which I don't, and I should more, because I always feel weird. Some of these pages like don't self promote your show and all this stuff. But I saw yours and I said, I'm going to answer. I like being a guest. I've interviewed somebody. I've done so many episodes, and I always interview, and being a guest is good.
Yeah, I was just flipping through your catalog. It's like looking at IMDb, going through there. But it's very impressive to see. You're at the time of the recording, you're like just under 1,000 episodes.
I'm at 998 right now. 1,000 is a big thing to me because, in all honesty, my show started off as an internet radio show in LA and a station. So I had a lot of comics I knew and actors, and I never saved those. It was just internet, And so I've done more, but since I've been posting them, and some people are like, oh yeah, who are you going to get? I don't know. Right now I have 9. As I said, I have nothing in the can. I have a guest schedule on Tuesday. I have Tom Bailey from the Thompson Twins, who's pretty big. He could be 1,000, but then I got to get someone in between him, or I can just put him later. And I'm also waiting to hear back about Michael Madsen and Bronson Pinchot, which both could also be good 1,000s, And I just laugh because it's like, you said about the list. I look at the list sometimes and I go, wow, man, I can't believe I've gotten the chance to talk all to these. I can't believe, like, when I started this show, I never thought, they used to come in studio. So I got to know a lot of these character actors. Because it was in LA. And so I got to see people that I watched on TV all the time. And I'm like you mentioned IMDb. I'm like, oh my God, they have 125 IMDb credits. It's been I don't know who's going to be 1,000. We'll find out. I got turned down for Alice Cooper. I thought I was going to have Moby. The last minute, his management decided to back off. The PR person told me. I'm like, I'm at the point now where I used to have to leave an episode out every week or sometimes 2 a week. Now I'm like, you know what? To wait for that 1,000, I'll wait 2 weeks. If it's
right.
It's like, it's not like I have a deadline. I'm getting paid here $10,000. Put your show up. I'm like, people will listen, and if they don't, I can't help that.
Right. The one. So I've been podcasting since 2007.
Oh, wow.
Just miscellaneous shows. And this is the one. I actually took like a 2-year break from Everything is Awesome, and this show started in 2016, and then I took off from like 2020 did a number on me mentally. So I just kind of took a couple years off, and this is the year I came back. But when I started Everything is Awesome in 2016, I approached it a lot differently than I approached podcasting in 2007, which was as a 20-some-year-old kid in 2007, I was like, oh, I'm going to start a podcast and just get famous. Like, that's what I'm going to do. And at the time, like, maybe it was possible if I was a little bit more like consistent, because there was no one doing podcasts. Like a handful of people were doing podcasts that like were named celebrities back then. So I was like all about numbers. I was all about this and that. Like, how do we get this? I entered this show and I was just like, I just want to have fun. Like, this was what this show is about. And like, it got to the point where like I was doing weekly, and then I was like, you know what, I'll just release when I release because that's good for my mental health. Same thing with taking like a 2-year break. It was great for my mental health. And now I'm of the mindset like, okay, the summer is when I'm busy, right? My wife, she's a teacher, so she's off. The kids are off. So now it's a seasonal show so that I don't have to do anything in the summer. I can just like spend time with the family and not worry about like hitting, certain goals for posting. And I think when you're like stress-free in podcasting, because I don't know for you, but for me, it's just a labor of love. Like you're not getting rich off of it.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that, because I started about 13 years ago, and I started out as an independent radio show, and I had to do an hour, and I was in the studio in Burbank, and And that's why I got a lot of good actors, because I was legit. They come in and tell their friends. But I had to do 2 1-hour shows a week then.
Okay.
Okay. It was for internet radio. And sometimes you'd be like, you couldn't get a guest. And I've always tried to keep myself in the level of guest I get. And you'd scramble. And then it was stressing. You're right. It was stressful.
Yeah.
I remember I had a heart issue. I was in the hospital. I had to cancel the show. And I'm like, my guests like, you all right? I'm like, no, I'm sorry. You're going to miss the show. Because I never missed a show. And then I started dating my now wife. And she was back east and I was in LA. And I would fly back sometimes for a week or two to see her once a month. And I would have to book, like, at one time I did 4 shows in one day. And it was Mary Lynn Rice Cub, who's from show 24.
Yep.
Stephen Allen, no, what? David Allen Kramer, big blonde guy. I can't think of his. He was one of the bad guys in True Romance.
Okay.
And then it was Wendy Liebman, who's one of the best comedians ever, became a good friend, and Heather McDonald. So I was like, I had to do 4. And it taxed you. But then when I moved back here, I started doing it, and I was like, you know what? If I don't get one, like I went into a slump where I couldn't get any good guests, and I just won't book any guests. I won't do that because I always tell young podcasters, you can book a good guest, but if you book 3 crappy guests, their PR person, whoever you're talking to, is going to look at those last 3 guests and go, why would we have them on your show?
Right.
And I couldn't get guests, and I was stressed, and I was like, you know what? If I can't get a guest, oh well, big shit, But then I ended up getting like 4 good guests at one time. But I'm like, you can't stress over it. I mean, it's. You're right. You're not making money. I mean, people going, oh, I'm on YouTube. I said, you have 5,000 subscribers. I know someone. I don't go on YouTube. And I'm like, you're not making any money off that. Like, you're putting all this time in. It's a matter of just do it for fun. I mean, it used to be you could get advertisers when I did it because I was on internet radio and I was getting 50,000 listeners an hour. So you get it. But then it changed because everyone then had a podcast. I mean, you were before me, but when I started, Marin was around. Marin and Jimmy Pardo both did my show in the very early days. Jimmy Pardo had a podcast, but the year before them, I mean, no one, and then it's so funny that you've seen it, like you've seen it when it was no one, and then now, like I go to LinkedIn and I know I have a business podcast too, but that's a YouTube show with 4 different. That's a panel, right? I'm like, everyone has a podcast, and I'm like, I don't want to sound like an ass, but it's like no one gives a shit about fine accounting for restaurants, like who's listening to it, and it's just funny. I mean, it's just people take it so serious. I'm like, it's conversation. That's what it is. It's all it should be. You're not sitting there. I mean, unless you do a political, or there's some, like my wife listens to some like those story podcasts, like true crime. That's different. Okay, that's a production. That's that's like a TV show, but you don't want to watch it. It's like listening to an audiobook. But I think some people just get so. They can't get this shit so serious. And they're like, I'm a podcaster. I'm like, anyone can be a podcaster.
Right.
It's your doctor.
Yeah. When I started, I didn't even know, like, really, I wasn't great, like, with audio software or anything. So when I started, I was just the host. I showed up and talked. We had like 4 or 5 of us in the room, but we each had, the first episode, I was actually in Bangor, Maine for work. And then my co-host was in Levittown and my producer was in Philadelphia. And so we all had our own computer. We all had, I think we used Google Hangouts at the time to record. And then the producer had like 3 or 4 computers to run all that, plus like a computer for a guest to call in on, and then like the master computer to record everything. So I remember going into the studio at those times, and like it was just literally almost a closet full of computers. And now people can literally just record on your phone to do a podcast.
I'll show you. This is, where is it? I record, and I've recorded since the studio closed. So the last 6 years. I record on this. It's a Zoom 4NHN. Okay. And I don't plug it into my computer. I just put it out like you used to record records back in the day.
Oh, okay.
And I don't edit unless there's some crazy malfunction. Like I was talking to the father from the Wonder Years, Dan Loria, and he's driving as he's talking. He's teaching some acting class in Palm Springs, or something from LA to Palm Springs. And he cuts out. I lose him because he's going up in,
Yeah.
But that's it. But I don't edit. But I do it because it's like, bottom line is this. People, if it's good content, if it's a good conversation, people are going to listen. I mean, I've watched regular news where, you're watching the Zoom call and they start frizzing up. It happens, and it's a matter of, unless it's like, you sound like you're in an echo chamber, you can't hear someone. But some people get so technical. I've never used a mic.
That's
I understand.
interesting.
I've never, and all my guests have come on like you. They never use the mic. I sit there because my background was stand up comedy, so I knew how to project,
Right.
and I put my thing and right down, so I don't need a mic. I guess I could plug in there, but I just record it on that little contraption, and then I plug it into my computer, and then I go to Podbean because I don't know anything about technical stuff. And I have my little MP3 file and I put it up and I type in, such and such, like last week, Terry Serpico from Law and Order SVU and Cobra Kai, episode 998. And then I do a little blurb about him and I upload it, and then they send it here and they send it here. And because I can't figure, I fell off iTunes for a while because I think my logo wasn't the right size. I couldn't even figure that. I had to call my buddy and say, "Hey, can you fix this logo? I don't think it's the right size." So
Well,
I want it to be as easy. And then the people who are into that, that's great. But sometimes like they overproduce it. Like
right.
I listened to a podcast the other day, a business podcast, because I knew the woman who was on it. She's very sweet. She did my business one called the Coop Tank. And this person, when you see a picture of a host and a guest, I want to hear from the guest. I don't want to hear from the
Right.
host. Like I don't.
Right.
I do 30 seconds up front. I bring my guests on Cooper Talk because no one wants to hear from me. They want to hear from Steven Van Zandt or David Duchovny. They don't want to hear from me.
Right.
And so
Exactly.
I was sitting there listening to this, and the woman who hosts it is talking, and she's of course doing a little splurb. That's fine, but then she's talking about her guest and my guest this, and I'm like, why don't you just ask her? Like it took 4.5 minutes of a 20-minute podcast till all in the first 4.5 minutes, all the guest said is, "Oh, I'm glad to be here," and that was it. And then and I'm like, I don't get it. Sometimes I don't get it. I mean, like you said, you just want to talk to people. Well, when we talk to people, if I go to a bar and I meet someone, because I love talking to random people, if I go to a
Yeah.
bar, I'm just like that. I don't sit there and tell someone my story for 4.5 minutes.
Right. Right. Right.
And that's what cracks me up. Sometimes I think people are doing this just to hear themselves.
Oh, I could be found guilty of that many of a time. I do like to talk. And when I go, it's funny to hear someone that is even less low key than I am when it comes to like the final production of my show, because obviously I'm using a microphone. And if I'm in person, I have a Zoom as well. I think I have the H6, but I have microphones that I'll connect up to it, and we'll sit down at the table with our microphones. So I get a little production happy with that. But the editing process, unless there's something specific that like you say you want cut, or there's like a lot of dead air, because I re-listen to the show at 2x speed. So if there's a large gap, I know, okay, that's a large gap. But then nothing else. And then I do the intro and outro in post, and there will be plenty of times where I get like 7 minutes into the intro and I'm like, what am I doing? I hit delete and I go back, and I always try. I have to pare myself down because I'm a talker.
With the editing, what's funny is, and I guess because I interview mostly, actors and musicians and creative types, that, the creative type, they do ramble. And that's what's hard when you do it on a phone. Like when you do it like this, you can see, but sometimes some of these actors are very theatrical.
Yes.
So they pause. And if you're on Zoom, like we're like video right now, you can see when I pause that I'm going to say something. But when you're on a phone and they pause, sometimes you jump in. And for me, though, I like the fact I stammer a little bit. I'm not going to lie, and I like the fact that I don't need my my pauses edited out. Like some people edit it like every pause.
Oh, no.
Some people just I was funny. I used to, when I knew the owner, I used to write like a monthly Cooper Talk in the Hamilton Gazette, and it would be one of my interviews, and I would go back and I would use my computer, my phone, and play the episode, and it would transcribe it into my computer.
Right.
And you would see there was lots of pauses and this and that, and you go back, and in writing, I understand that, but in a conversation, no one talks like there'd be no Tarantino movies if everyone talked like, "Hi, hey, hey, how you doing, Kevin?
Yep.
Kevin, so I'm walking down the street, Kevin. What are you doing?" No, it wouldn't happen. So that's why I don't get into the editing, because when people speak, I think that shows who they are and their their character. And I think I don't want to take that out and then cut out a whole chunk on a podcast, because then what if the message you're ever trying to, what if they listen to it? I always think, what if the guest listens to it and they call you back and go, what the hell was that? Like, why did you cut that out? What are you doing? So I leave it be. I've
Yeah.
won you like once or twice. Actually, I'm not going to say, I had someone from a band who they broke up and they're suing each other.
Oh
And
no.
he sent me a message and he said, "Listen, I would never do this, but can you just snip that one little thing?" And I said, "Yeah, I will." And I sent it to my friend. But he gave the reason, or
Yeah.
someone will say, I didn't like them. I think I sounded bad about an actor made a comment, but didn't sound bad, but he thought it sounded like he was slamming another actor. So he asked me to take it out. I said, "Yeah, I don't have a problem with it."
Yeah. Yeah. That is my editing. I mean, I want to say back in the day, like very early, I was like, let's get all those uhs and ums out. Like we need to be crystal clear. And to your point, exactly right. That's just not the way we talk as human beings. When I'm sitting down having a conversation at work or at the bar or wherever, plenty of times I'll go, and that's just part of natural conversation. Now, if it's like 5 minutes of uhs and ums, I might trim that down a little bit, but it is this new era of podcasting for me, which has been going on since 2016, is really much about being like an authentic version of myself, and that includes leaving in, sometimes just all the bad audio sometimes. And sometimes that needs to be cut because it's just too bad. But more often than not, like I said, it's a very easy editing process. I don't even like using the term editing because I rarely cut anything. I just want to listen to it one time really fast and make sure that it's good. It sounds good and it's level.
It's funny when you say, listen, I have never, okay, the only time I've ever listened to my show is, and unfortunately it's been a lot lately, is when a guest passes away. And I've had a bunch, but I never listen to my show. I do it. I go, you know what? I don't want to hear it. I did the interview. It's funny because I've done so many episodes. Someone sent me an email and they asked me, how did you get this guy? And I was like, I didn't even know who the guy was. And I was like, oh, it was the lead singer of the Crash Test Dummies. And I'm like, who? I Googled it. I go, oh, that guy. He was cool. But I did it like 6 years ago. But so I don't listen to my shows because one, I already did it, and once again, you do some editing, you fine tune it. I don't. So I'm like, I lived it, and it's something that, but I've done so many episodes that I'll watch. I was watching Shawshank Redemption and I'm like, oh my God, that guy was on my show. The guy who's like the leader of the guys who keep raping Timothy Robbins. That guy, he was the nicest guy, but I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, he did my show. And it's so funny when you, but I don't, it's you listen to it because you edit it, but I just think I have no reason, except when they pass away, I like to hear their story. And there's been a lot. I mean, Willie Garson did my show twice. He passed away. I mean, the list goes on, and it's sad. You're like, God damn, you get to know them, even though you don't know. You talk to them for like Willie twice. I did it in person and on Skype, and you get to know these people, and you get to hear their stories. And when they pass, you're like, oh my God, another one. It's sad to say, but I'm like, as we get older, and you have things like that, and I do my what I listen to and what I watch. So they're going to be, I'm 60. I just turned 60, and it's going to be, people who are older than me, or 55 to 80. And unfortunately, a lot of those people are passing away.
Yeah, no, I'll be 40 this year. And I'm at that age now where people that like I respected, as actors and directors and writers and stuff are like getting up there in age and either having scares or they're passing away. Like I'm afraid what's going to happen to me mentally and emotionally when Harrison Ford passes away, because he was such a huge part of my childhood. And I don't usually, I remember like 20 years ago or however long ago Paul Walker passed away. I don't think it was 20 years ago. It was less than that. But one of my buddies got like emotional about it. I was like, really? Like he was, I think, our age at the time. And I never got affected by a celebrity death until Robin Williams passed away, because he was so, ingrained in my childhood from, Aladdin and Mrs. Doubtfire and all his great movies and stand-ups. And that was the first time where I was like, I think I'm going to cry that this man I don't know passed away, because he felt like someone I knew. I mean, I'm a Nick at Night kid, back when Nick and Night wasn't my childhood. It was it was my dad's childhood. So I watched like Mork and Mindy all the time, and was very familiar with Robin Williams' work when I was a child. So that was a tough one. There's a few local people that I've talked to. I don't know if you're familiar with Chris Cotton. He was a Philadelphia comedian. And he did a few things for Comedy Central. I interviewed him at the last podcast festival we ever held in 2019. And like a year later, he passed away. And that was like a huge hit for me because I was like in the process of editing his episode when the news came down. I was like, it hit me like, not like in an emotional way, just like a weird mind fuck way almost.
Right. It's funny. I've sent messages out to people, and then, one was the guy who he was on Cheers. He played the English bar owner upstairs.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
And I remember I sent a message to him on Facebook, and then I was going to go back and I sent it to him and a week later he died. I'm like, oh my God. Or I was talking to the guy who played Flounder in Animal House. And at the time I was recording in LA, and he was up in the Bay Area. But then all of a sudden it's like, man, I just sent this person a message, and then like 2 weeks later they died. I'm like, it's just weird. And it is, because, you get to know these people and they are part of your life. And for me, I mean, I got to know them. You spend an hour with these people, and and you go, like Morgan Shepherd was this old English gentleman. His son is the shepherd who was on Supernatural.
Yeah.
Mark Shepherd. And Morgan did all, used to hang out with O'Toole and Hopkins, and he would tell all these stories. He was a voice actor, and he was the nicest old guy. And he came to the studio, and he had a little Jaguar, and he comes in, and I was working with a talent agent who had a lot of character actors. So I was getting guys from Star Trek, stuff like this. And I heard he's passed. I'm like, I was so bummed, because I remember when I was moving from LA back east, I said, this is my last weekend in LA, blah, blah, blah. And he wrote on the post, he's like, oh, we're going to miss you, Coop. You're one of the good ones. I was like, oh man, and I'm like, then the guy, then it's like, he's like father of the age, and it is, you do get to know him, but that's the one thing. And as you get older, I'm going now where I see a lot of my friends' parents are passing away. And it's something, but the actors, they're going to go, and we're lucky to have them as long as Norman Lear. We had it for so long.
Oh
We were
my
lucky
God.
to have him that long. The guy was 101. And I know the guy who co-created, he redid One Day at a Time with Norman. His name is Mike Royce. He
Okay.
wrote for Seinfeld. And he created Men of a Certain Age with Ray Romano. He wrote for Everyone Loves Raymond.
Okay.
And that guy, Norman Lear was 101, and he was still working. Like he was still running shows. And you look at the guy had such an amazing thing. And when that happens, because I'm older than you, we grew up watching All in the Family, the Jeffersons, Maude. I mean, everyone was at home. You sat there and you watched the TV shows, and it wasn't like now with cable. It's like, if you missed it, you were screwed till the summer. As people forget. And before the VCR, and you would watch it, and you would sit there with your family, and you'd watch it. And then later, when you'd go to work, or like when I did comedy, when the VCR was out, I was living in North Jersey. Me and this one guy would always make sure one of us taped Seinfeld. And Seinfeld was coming up, because it was something, if you missed it, you were screwed. And doing comedy at the time, I'd be on the road a lot. So I couldn't watch these shows, because when they're on, I'm in the club. And it wasn't like you can come home now and my wife DVRs everything. Like, she watches a lot of network TV. So we come home, we watched that. We've been watching that show, Truman Capote versus the Swan.
Okay.
And it's got an amazing. It's on FX. It's got. I mean, the cast is Diane Lane, Molly Ringwald, Callista Flockhart, Emily Blunt. It's just an amazing cast. But I didn't get to watch it last night because we had stuff going on, and then tonight I have things going on. But we know we can watch it. Maybe at Saturday at 9 a.m.
Yeah,
that's the thing. But so those shows, like with Norman Lear, they were, a part of us. And like with you, because you watched Mork and Mindy, which is funny that you're 40 and you know that, because I was on a set in Hollywood, and someone sat there, and the guy went nano, and a young girl goes, "What's that?" And I'm like, oh, I'm like, what? Like, and it's just because it wasn't and if you watch it now, it's like if you watch Seinfeld now, if they had a cell phone, every episode would be fixed. Like
Right,
all you just
right.
call, we can't make the movie, George. But
Yeah,
it is funny that you do really grow attached to these people. And that's like me with music. I'm a big Springsteen fan. When he dies, I'm gonna be bummed. When
yeah,
Tom Petty died, I was very bummed. And it was like Prince. They were part. I mean, we were like, we were at a certain age. For me, it's like Prince was a few years ahead of me, but like that was our music, like in
yeah,
college. And so we do get very attached to these celebrities, and it's a good thing. That's a bad thing when you get so crazy that you're hanging outside someone's house crying and crying. I'm like, okay, you know what?
oh yeah,
I mean, when someone writes the long sentimental post, it's like, okay, really, you didn't even know the person. Like,
right.
come on. It's like, I understand they made an influence on you, and that's important. And you should say, man, this is a big part of my life. And but when they sit there and they go, oh, it's like, and then 6 months later, oh, I'm still missing this person. It's like, shut up. Like,
Yeah,
they're dead. It's
yeah,
awful, but you don't lose them. It's not like when you lose a close friend and you only have pictures to lose. With Robin Williams, you can go back and watch
yes,
Goodwill Hunting and go,
yeah.
holy shit. Or there's a great movie he's in called Seize the Day, which was
I don't think I've seen that one.
like it was a very serious role for him. It was based on like some book, and that's sort of where like the whole carpe diem came.
Mhm.
But then of course you can go back and watch that stuff.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's what's good because you'll never lose their memory.
Yeah, that's you nailed it on the head when it comes to your personal losses. Like it's very often that you only have that picture to remember. Maybe more modern days, I guess we might have some video, therefore we have their voice still. But like, so I was my uncle passed away in 2016. He was only 15 and a half years older than me and passed away from cancer. And I remember when he passed, like a few months later, the first thing that started going was like, what did he sound like? Like that's one of the first things you lose. And I'm so very grateful for the fact that there was one episode of an old podcast I did that he sat down and talked with me on it. And I went back and listened to that. I re-released it as part of this just because it was good for for me. And I'll always be grateful for that. And I actually I tell everyone, I was like, record as much as possible, whether it's audio or video, because one day you're going to lose somebody. And that's the voice. And like, I can't remember what my grandmother sounds like. I can't remember what some of my aunts sound like. So it's that, and that sucks because, usually those people are the most influential in your life. And whereas it's like, yes, Robin Williams, loved him. He was influential, but you're right. I can go and I can like on the anniversary of his death, I'll usually like maybe post something like, oh,
Oh yeah,
remembering.
but some people, they sit there like 3 months later. Oh, I'm missing him so much. Today I'm missing. What do you mean? Shut up. Like you didn't even meet him. I understand. If you know the person, I mean, and it is natural to do it for the year of their death. And it's like when Lou Reed, on Lou Reed's birthday, I love Lou Reed. I'll put, he left, but yeah, some people are just so melodramatic, and then they'll put up like they'll put the picture of them, even though like they met him at like a con, like one of those things, like they paid $40 for a
Yeah,
picture with him, like
yeah,
here's me and such, and I miss him so much. You didn't know him, okay?
right.
That picture, it's not like I have pictures from you know in Hollywood. It's funny, the guy Stephen Bauer who was in Scarface and Ray Donovan, he just did my show few weeks ago, and he wouldn't shut up. He was the nicest guy, but he was a great storyteller. But I like to keep my show at an hour. And
Yeah,
then he got to like an hour and 30 minutes, and we still hadn't gotten about the set of Scarface. But they're all fascinating stories. And I said, listen, Steven, can you come back? And he goes, yeah. So then he came back like a week later, and fascinating, but told an hour and 45 minutes. Okay. But my point about it is I met him at a bar in LA years ago. He was there. I got a picture with him. And I posted, hey, look, it's me and Stephen Bauer, Manolo from. But I just met him. I bought him a drink and
yeah,
we talked a little bit. And he said I reminded him of his old Jewish agent, Maury something. He said the name because I was wearing a different hat. But now I can show the picture and say, if he passed away, I can say, yeah, I really missed him. I talked for 3.5 hours.
yeah,
So it's
yeah.
not one of those things that was just a photo op that he was there. And I did actually talk to him because, in LA, you see these people all the time.
Right.
But I always laugh when people will be like, oh yeah, I miss such and such. And they're shaking the hand and they're waving. And it says like, Cherry Hill Horror Con. It's like, did you really meet him? You met
Right.
him. But it's like, I met Keanu Reeves a few weeks ago. And the reason is he's in a band called Dog Star.
Right.
And I'm friends with the drummer. The drummer's done my show. His
Uh,
name's Rob Mailhouse, who was also an actor. And they were in Philly. So Rob put me and my wife on the guest list. And after the show, there was the lead singer's girlfriend's from Philly. So they closed off the back of Underground Arts, and there was like 25 of us. But I actually got up to go take a picture with Keanu, and I talked to him for a little bit. I said, hey, Rob, and that's, so that I consider, okay, I actually met him because I know Rob. But if I met him in a convention, as I said, it's always funny when people in this area, when you live on the West Coast, you see the people all the time. My friend was a manager at a grocery store called Ralph's. It's like ShopRite. And LL Cool J would walk in, Kate Beckinsdale, Valerie Bertinelli. Eddie Van Halen used to sit out front smoking cigarettes and drinking vodka. He looked homeless. But people are used to it. But here, people go crazy because they don't have it. They have athletes. They don't have these actors. And it's just funny. But when people do pass away, Facebook lights up with pictures because my friends sometimes joke, "Oh, I don't have a picture." I know people who actually, knew him, but it is funny about celebrity deaths.
Yeah. So you started out on the East Coast, in the Jersey area, you said?
I grew up in Cherry Hill, graduated Cherry Hill East, went to, at the time, Stockton State College near, when I say now it's Richard Stockton University.
Okay.
And
They classed it up a bit.
Yeah, they jacked the price up through the roof. Like what it cost for 1 year now costs me for my whole education to stay down there on campus and eat. So
Oh, wow.
I had a meal plan and books. And I started, and then when I got out of college, I started hitting the open mics 2 years later in Philly, and then started doing stand-up comedy. And then I was on the road from probably 88 or 89 to 95. And then I ended up in North Jersey, and I ended up in the West Coast. I was in Vegas for a year, and I was in San Diego for 6, and I moved to LA. And I used to do, I performed there. I've been a hand model. I've been on Westworld and NCIS. I've been on the Ellen Show twice. I've been a featured background in Silicon Valley, Superstore, a bunch of shows. I was in one of the worst movies ever called Killer Drag Queens on Dope. Co-starred Alexis Arquette, bless her soul. She passed. She was one of the drag queens. And I was with a guy, my character was me and this guy, Mark Beltzman, who, if you watched Billy Madison with Adam Sandler, he was one of the buddies. Him and I think Norm Macdonald were the buddies in the beginning.
Okay.
I did a bunch of that stuff. I was, like anything in Hollywood, you got to work. I know a guy who's been on Cobra Kai a few times and Axe. He's driving for Amazon. So you're always on a hustle. It's one of the reasons why I moved back. So I moved back 6 years ago, and had a regular job. And now I coach people in podcasting. I do some public speaking, and I started doing stand up again. I mean, I do it occasionally. I don't do it much, but I'll do a show every 3 months, and I always get a turnout. And I work a lot with this guy named Joe Matarese, who's been on Letterman twice, and who's been on Stephen Preston and Steve a lot. So yeah, so I'm from the area, and I'm a Jersey guy. I lived on the West Coast for 24 years, and then I moved back 6 years ago.
What do you prefer? East Coast, West Coast?
Now, like years ago, LA was cool, man.
Right.
But now the homeless situation's gotten really bad. I mean, it's so funny when people say, "Oh, Philadelphia's got a bad homeless situation." I'm like, what are you joking? I've seen like 3 homeless guys. Yeah, I'll be honest, but there it's just tense. I'm glad I'm back in the East, and I'm glad also we've been, since I've been back, we've been blessed without crappy winters. I mean, we had a little snow this year, but in where we are in Marlton, it was like it was melted by the afternoon. I didn't have to shovel. I had to shovel. My wife's like, make sure you shovel this little part. But we own a condo, so they do all the shoveling, but there wasn't enough for them to shovel. And I like the East Coast better. I like the East Coast beaches a lot better. The West Coast, the Pacific always just seems a lot colder, and the beaches are just different, man. Like there's no beach tigers. There's not those pain in the asses, but it's just like people just. It's all tourists, man. Like you go to Santa Monica and you go and there's like people walking around the beach with jeans and pizzas and setting up tables to make sandwiches. But the best thing is there's the abuelitas, the little old lady, Mexican old ladies, which I always get mad at their sons. Like they're making the mother walk around selling shit on the beach, but they would sell this mango, cantaloupe, and watermelon with like this chili sauce, and it was so good. But I always be like, why is I wanted to say, but they don't speak English, so I couldn't say it. I want to say, why are you doing all the work and your son's just sitting there bossing you around?
Right.
But so no, so I do like we don't really get to be, I like the East Coast. I love being where I live in Marlton, you can jump on the speed line. The only downfall now is a lot of bands are skipping this area. They're going to Bethlehem or AC. And because of my show, I get comped for a lot of concerts. But then
Right.
I'll see like a band's coming. I'm like, oh, and I'm like, I'm not driving to Bethlehem, But
Right.
I do like the East Coast better. I think because, call it global warming, call it whatever it is. But like the weather's changing.
Yeah.
It's not freezing. It rains a lot, but it rains everywhere. And we don't where we are, like you said
Just outside
Levittown.
of Philly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Levittown.
Where we are, we don't get the bad snow. Like Boston gets their asses kicked.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
don't get the tornadoes. I mean, we had some tornadoes in South Jersey, which is weird, but
Yeah.
I'm a Jersey guy. I'm glad I came back. I love my
We-
sports teams, and I'm glad.
Yeah, so it's funny because my son, he's 12. My oldest son is 12, and it like started to snow the last time it snowed. I think the last time it snowed, it was the day that it melted by the afternoon. And he's like, maybe we'll get out of school. I was like, boy, if you get out of school for this, I was like, this is not. I think in the 12 years he's been alive, I can count on one hand how many snowstorms he's really got to enjoy as a child.
Well, what's funny about the snow. One time in LA, it hailed and it laid on the ground, and people are putting all over Facebook. It's snowing. I'm like, it's not snow. It's hail. It's not. It's still 40 degrees out. It's not snowing.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, we've been lucky. We haven't. Since I've been back, we've gotten two storms this year. Nothing last year. I mean, like a year and a half with not getting more than an inch.
Yeah.
And that makes a big difference, because, and that's the other thing about the East Coast I love. And people will complain about the traffic. LA traffic is so bad. Whatever you hear, it's worse. Okay. Like you can go sometimes, if you had an audition, you sit there and you have to give yourself an hour and a half. Sometimes just go. I lived in Burbank. Hollywood was right over the hill. It's 11 miles in this area. It might take 15, 20 minutes. There, sometimes you're waiting for an hour. And then what always sucks is when you go to the audition, the day you don't have traffic, you get there and then you're just sitting around. You're like, what am I going to do? I'm here. But so that's the traffic. I'm glad I'm back for the traffic. There's not, the homeless situation is getting really out of hand. Prices, you can't buy anything. And I mean, it's awful. And I'm glad, I'll be honest, because being in New Jersey, I don't have to pump gas anymore. I mean, that's like the biggest thing. Like when my wife moved out, and she grew up in New Jersey. I mean, she's originally grew up. She was little. She was in Staten Island, but since she's driven, she's been in New Jersey. She didn't know how to pump gas. Yeah, you should know. So I remember we used to go to the station right down. I would in where I lived there was a main road, Glen Oaks, and when she first moved out, she would drive down like a block. I'd jump out, I pump her gas, and I walk back up. And then she finally learned. But it's amazing. Like when it's snowing, you just pull up or you go to Wawa and they're there. And the best is though when you see people from New Jersey go to Pennsylvania when they need gas, they don't know what to do. They just sit at the gas pump and they're like looking like it's a lotto machine. Like they see those colors and people are getting pissed and they're like, and then they're getting mad because they're probably on their phones writing their Yelp review going, oh, the attendants were so bad here. It's like, no, sometimes you have to say you have to pump your own gas.
Yeah. The Jersey folks that come over to Pennsylvania, and I could walk to Trenton. Like it's not far from where I'm at. So
you wouldn't.
No.
That wouldn't be safe. You might get beat up.
Right. But it's often that we have Jersey folks over here. We're right there. And it doesn't happen often, as often now, but when I first started driving, I noticed it all the time. Like people just sitting in their cars. I'm like, what are you doing? And I got to admit, when I go to Jersey, I'm sitting there and sometimes I'm impatient because I'm used to just getting out and doing it. So like sometimes I'll be there. I'm like, can I just?
I had to get used to that when I moved back. When I would visit her, I'd be like, what the hell? Because it's funny. They say they're doing this. The law is to create jobs. Okay. Mm-hmm. But there's always like one guy working. He's like the slowest guy. And you're just sitting there. And I would be the same way. You get antsy because you're used to just pull up, get out, put your card in, you're going. And my wife would be like, you can't get out. I'm like, what do you mean I can't get out? no, I want to get out. But yeah, but then again, when it's freezing out or pouring rain and just pull
Yeah.
up, and I don't see the thing is though for me, I don't like to go. I don't like to go to the gas station when it's raining hard because I feel like a dick. Like I'm making this guy,
Right.
because they deal with it. So it's funny. It's but yeah. So I do. I'm glad I came back to New Jersey. I'm glad I lived in LA, and I think living away. I've also lived in Vegas and San Diego and North Jersey. I think it makes you appreciate New Jersey more. It makes you. We live in a beautiful area, and people don't know that. When I would talk to people, they would be like, "Oh, you're in New Jersey. Why are you an Eagles fan?" They don't know that there's two parts of New Jersey.
Oh
They don't
yeah.
get that. I remember someone said to me, "Oh, so you ever Philadelphia's a state, right?" Like what? I was, and someone's like, "Well, why is Philadelphia important?" I'm like, "The Liberty Bell."
Right.
It's just the New Jersey gets a bad rep because what exit? What I would tell people, no one's. I don't live near an exit. The old SNL sketch. What exit? New Jersey. What exit? No, no one's there. We have beaches an hour away. If you want to ski, I don't ski, but you can go. And you can go and where we live. You can go to the Poconos. That's an hour and a half away. You can go to Baltimore. That's 2 hours away. DC's 3 hours away. You have so much to do. And if even like we drove to the Finger Lakes, that's 4.5 hours. It's close. There's so
Yeah.
much here, but people just think they all think it's Newark or like Elizabeth. They don't
Right.
understand that we're the Philadelphia area, which is completely different than North
Yeah.
Jersey.
You are preaching to the choir about why I love living in this area. Now, admittedly, like there's other areas that I would have loved to lived in when I was younger, but they all kind of center around the greater Philadelphia area because everything that I ever want to do is realistically about 2.5 hours away. Like I can get to New York in 2 hours if I want to. It's not easy, but I can. I can get down to DC in 2 hours if I want to. Again, not easy, but I can do it. And like, Poconos, same for me, hour and a half, beach, hour and a half. Everything is so close. And like as an older person now, like I appreciate the history of Philadelphia.
And you have kids, so you can take your kids to see the Liberty Bell or the Franklin Institute,
Yeah.
which people still go to the Franklin Institute. Do you ever
All
take
the
your kids there?
time.
Is
Yeah.
that heart? Do they still have that heart you walk through?
Oh God, do they? Yes.
It was like that's been around forever. It's probably still crappy as hell, made of like paper mache. But kids love it. The kids
Yep.
love because it's fascinating to them. But yeah, that's the thing. We have so much here. We have so much, and it's wonderful, and people don't get it. And we do get the seasons, but I mean, when I was in LA, Christmas time never felt like Christmas because it was like
Sunny.
55 out. I always like you drive by a house, it's a palm tree with Christmas lights. No, that's not Christmas.
Give me that pine tree. I've been to California maybe 2 or 3 times in my life. Once for work where I was 21 years old. I don't really remember it at all. And another time, my wife and I went she used to sell LuLaRoe, those leggings, those buttery soft leggings. She used to do that. So we went to like a convention for them out in Anaheim.
Okay.
And oh my God, the drive from LAX to Anaheim, I wanted to kill myself.
I had a friend who flew out to a wedding, and he flew into LAX, and the wedding was in Simi Valley or Thousand Oaks, which on paper is 40 miles, 35 miles. So he's getting on a Friday. And he goes, "Coop, how long is it going to take me to get to my hotel?" I go, about 2 hours. Whatever. I go, "No, about 2 hours." He goes, "No, it's only 30. No, you're leaving LAX. You're going to 405 to the 101, which are the worst." And it happened. And then I had a friend from college was out there. He goes, "Coop, let's go to Venice." And I'm like, "It's Friday. It's 4:30. I don't want to go to Venice." He goes, it's only 15 miles. I go, "Dude, it's going to take us an hour and a half." "No, it's not." Okay. You couldn't even cut off to go on the side streets. That's how bad, because it just, and the thing about the traffic out there is because it's Hollywood, because there's TV and movies shot there, it's not a 9 to 5. Like you try to hit 76 in Philly at 5 o'clock, well, you're screwed because it's rush hour. There, a production's going, there's always people out because productions go all different times. You get there 4 a.m, you get there 6 a.m. And so it was one of those things you got used to it. But that's the thing here. I mean, the first time we moved back and I was going to something, I was on 73 in Jersey, and it's backed up, and I'm getting like, what the hell is this shit? What is this stuff? And I was only there for waiting for like 5 minutes in traffic. Then I remembered, wait, if I was in LA, I wouldn't even like. You would see the building, and you'd be like, I'm almost there. But then it takes like an hour, and then and then you have to pee because you don't think, and then you're like, oh my god, and yeah. I'm glad to be back. This is a great area, and for all the crap the area gets, it's wrong. Except the sports fans are negative as hell, and I'm a huge sports fan. I can't even listen to sports radio anymore. All they do
I
is
feel
bitch.
like sports radio in this, I don't listen to it anymore
It's
myself
awful.
because
I'm friends with
it's
Joe Conklin. Joe's good, but because he does impressions, but it's
right.
so negative, and you listen to these shows, and they don't know shit. Like they don't.
Yeah, I will say that I agree that we can be, because I've done it myself. I used to travel for work. I used to install point of sales at like gas stations and at one point like amphitheaters, like the Tweeter Center or whatever it's called now. And I went to Dallas to do, I think it was at the time it was called the Super Yellow Pages Amphitheater or something. And I was like, I'm going to, and I was 22 or 3 at the time. I'm like, we're going, Eagles were playing well. I'm like, I'm going to wear head to toe Eagles gear. I'm going to show Dallas what's up. And I get there, I land, no one said anything. I go up to the Dunkin' Donuts at the airport to get a coffee. And he goes, oh, you're an Eagles fan? I'm like, what of it, buddy? He's like, you guys are really good this year. I'm like, okay, that's tail between my legs.
Yeah, I saw that at a Kings game. The Kings were playing Flyers, and my friend had season tickets, and he would take me every once in a while. He took me when the Flyers were playing, and I just remember looking up because he had very good seats. He was a pain in the ass, but he had these really good seats. I'd only go and listen. I'd have to listen to his bullshit, and he'd always be late, but they were really good seats, and they were free. He'd always buy a few beers, and I just see the stereotypical Philly fan, hammered. One guy's got like his shirt off. They're very, shall we say, portly, husky. We'll just say,
Yeah.
and they're like, and it's like, oh god, guys, come on. That's why we get a bad name. And I'll tell you, Dodgers fans are the worst. I mean, they're all gangbangers, and people get beat up outside the stadium. You don't hear about that. Phillies fans are nice, and the thing is, if you go to a game. Well, first of all, if you go to a game anywhere and you're wearing the other team's gear, you're going to hear something. But Philadelphia, you know not to do it. Just like you wouldn't walk into a Raiders game with a Chargers jersey because you might get your ear bit off. So it's a matter of just being smart when you go to games. We went to Arizona to see the Eagles, and the fans were great. The Cardinals fans were great. They were nice, but they were the Cardinals. They were good shit. I mean, we hadn't won a Super Bowl yet. This was 9 years ago, and that was the other thing. Every game I would go because you have to watch the games at 10 a.m. And I had a bar down the street. I'd walk down there and I'd sit there and there it's fans from everywhere. So it's not just like an Eagles bar, but we did find an Eagles bar. But I'd sit next to Cowboys fans and Skins fans and Giants fans, Skins at the time. And they'd be sitting there, you guys haven't won shit. And I'd walk home and I'd walk by this one bar as I walked a few blocks to my place and they'd be like, oh, fuck Philly. Philly sucks, And they go, yeah, Cooper, they always give me shit. And then I moved and they won. And I'm so glad that I was here when they won because we went to the parade and just the vibe in the city when they were in the Super Bowl. And even last year when they lost, the vibe, you can't beat that. It's something that every sports fan needs to feel. Like that's why I wanted Detroit to get the Super Bowl so bad.
Yeah.
Or Buffalo to win it because there's just that vibe. But when they won, the only thing in my back of my head was I wished I could have still lived in LA just to walk in the bar and give everybody the finger and run around the bar and go Eagles. But but the fans here they're just too negative. I mean, yeah, we did lose the World Series and the Super Bowl and then the Union and the in the same
that was a tough one.
But we made it.
Yes.
So many people, even when the Eagles fell apart last year. How many people wish their team, when their team falls apart and they're 10-7 or whatever, and was going to the playoffs? You know how many cities wish? Tell that to someone from Jacksonville, or not Jacksonville, Carolina. Tell them. And so that's the thing. We get spoiled.
Yeah. It's funny. Like me and my coworkers at my day gig will talk about this. That our kids they don't like, they're just seeing what it's like to be a Philadelphia sports fan now.
But they've seen a World Series, they've seen a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
They don't know that dreadful, painful. I'm 20 years older than you, man. I remember when they were just the worst. Like Sears catalog probably only sold Eagles merch in the Philadelphia area because no one else wanted it. And kids were wearing Niners jackets. I even wore a Vikings jacket when I was a little kid. My brother had a Rams jacket. I don't know how, but then we had Eagles stuff. But the kids now are spoiled because, and it's good for them. You know, it's not, at least not like a Cowboys fan. They haven't won anything in 30 years and they're still talking crap. I mean, that's like Dodger fans. You know, people that go, yeah, Philly. And I'm like, what have you guys done? They go, we won the World Series. I go, you haven't won a World Series since 85. I go, that strike shortened season, that's 62 games, doesn't count. That's not a World Series. It's got an asterisk. So I'm like, stop knocking Philly. You know, so we lost. We did win a World Series, you know, years ago. We were in it again. Dodgers, you're always in it. You're always the best team and you always suck. So our kids are actually lucky that they saw a Super Bowl, which is one of the, I mean, it was just, you know, it's just fascinating just to see this city. It was so long and people talking about, you know, they wish they're dead. I wish my father was alive to see it, you know, because he was a huge Eagles fan. And just watching it, I was watching it with my wife at her brother's house. And I sat in the same seat, man, that I sat in the other game. I had a bottle of Patron next to me. I was snipping on the Patron. And it was awesome. And it was just, and the whole city, unlike LA when they win championships, they light the city on fire. I mean, I don't feel like it goes crazy, but I used to watch when the Lakers would win. I would watch the news and see all the dumpster fires. Like, you know, so.
Yeah, no, it's the last few years, especially with the success of just going to championship games, has been like walking down the street. Even if you're not wearing anything, it's just like a little nod. Like everyone knew we were all happy. If you are wearing gear, you get the Go Birds. That's our hello.
I went to what is it, Forest Theater, when they were in the Super Bowl, and there was a show. Tickets were usually like 100. I think it was 1776 was the show. Tickets were usually like $115. But they said like if you wore Eagles gear and went to the box office, you got the tickets for like $15. So me and my wife went to a play, no fees, $30. It would cost 100. I mean, it was just that energy. And then McGillans would pour the green beer, even though they used to only do it on St. Patty's Day. They did that. I actually stopped by in Philly last year when this boy took the train in. And I stopped by McGillans to get a green beer just to get the feel.
Yeah, I that's a bucket list stop off for me, because every time they're doing something like that, I go like, oh, I got to do it. And then I like read like, oh, like it's just going to be busy. Like, good luck getting in.
I went in the day on like a Thursday. So it's like, it wasn't crazy.
And that's the one thing that like, I know, you know, especially from the outside, like we do have a very negative, stereotype about us as sports fans, which, you know, sometimes it's true, but when you're in it, when you're in town or in the suburbs or wherever, like we all got each other's back. And
I see, like when you see like an 80-year-old lady with gold lame slippers that's wearing an Eagles shirt and it says "Go Birds."
Yeah.
When you go to ShopRite and they have cakes that are Birds cakes, and then where Acme's like, hey, come in with your Eagles gear, we'll give you 10% off. It's just it is a good feeling, and it's that's what makes this area special. That makes the fans special. It's not because they're jerks. It's because they love their team so much. And it's like anything, though. Don't you want the best? Like, don't you want your team to do the best? It's like you have kids. Don't you want your kids to be the best? Yeah, you do. I mean, and you love them, and you want to do the best. And if they screw up, you're probably disappointed. But you always know there's always next year. And the thing is, though, since the Eagles won the Super Bowl, I think I become softer. It's not that angst, you know, like that angst of they're gonna. Now I'm like, okay, so they fell apart. We've been to the Super Bowl and won the Super Bowl in the last 6 years. Yeah. I can't complain. We've won one because it sucked. Like being Buffalo, and I have relatives in Buffalo. Being Buffalo must suck because you guys have lost like all the Super Bowls in a row. Or the Vikings. The Vikings have never won, and it's that thing. But once you win, it changes everything. It's like I used to always say. It used to be being an Eagles fan was when you were younger and you'd hang outside the liquor store and you try to get someone to buy you beer. You'd ask someone, and finally you give someone the money, and they go to get you beer, and you're thinking, I'm gonna be like the highlight of the party. Everyone's gonna, and they come out and they have wine coolers. That's what it was like being an Eagles fan. Like it was you expected like, oh, I want Molson or Heineken, and you get Bartles and James or Zima. That's what being an Eagles fan. But now we don't have to worry about that. It's off our back. No one can say,
Yeah.
oh, we have 5 rings. Yeah, but you haven't won one. When's the last time you won one? Oh, the Eagles won one 6 years ago. Oh, last time you won one, your wife was thin and you had hair. Things change. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. Now we can talk shit. Before we couldn't talk shit.
It's always fun to me when Cowboys fans like say stuff when your quarterback wasn't even born when the last time they went to a playoff game.
I go back and forth with people on Facebook from Dallas. I have good friends who are Cowboys fans, but the good ones understand that they're not doing shit.
Yeah.
They don't. But the other ones, as you said, they weren't even around when Aikman was playing. Like you can't talk. You can't talk smack. That's like us talking smack about oh yeah, man, Led Zeppelin. No, you can't talk smack. It's just crazy.
It's wild to see, like, when I was a kid in elementary school in the 90s, there were Dallas Cowboys starter jackets all over the place because that was the bandwagon team.
See, I missed that. Thank God.
Yeah, no, I was a 90s elementary school in the 90s. So like all these kids had that. And now it's like, oh, Eagles gear. Like my kid, my oldest kid, he's like, when am I getting, like, can I get an Eagles jersey? I'm like, yes, you can. Yep. And like every now and then he'll joke around, like, especially before, like, he's gotten into it because of like the World Series and the Super Bowl appearances in the last like 2 or 3 years. Before that, he would joke around with me and say, oh, maybe I'll get this Cowboys thing. I was like, if you get that Cowboys thing, you're going to live on the street.
Exactly.
But I love this town. I love this area. I've been very fortunate for an old job of mine to like travel to like over half the country. So I've seen like bits, not as, I haven't been there for more than a week at a time, but I've seen it.
But you've seen it. That's important because you see, I know so many people, but I always, if someone's like, what are you talking about? I always laugh. Like everyone I know, I grew up with that's lived here forever. They, on their vacation, they always go to the Jersey Shore. I like the Jersey Shore, but it's like, why don't you go to Italy? Why don't you go? It's the same price. Like now, rent a house in Jersey Shore is like $3,500 for a week. And you gotta, it's not like they have a cleaning lady. It's not like a maid comes in like a hotel. I'm like, me and my wife, when we got married 4.5 years ago, we took our honeymoon to Croatia. It cost us like $3,400 for both of us to fly over, stay in this nice little place, and the money, it's not as expensive as here. And that's the one thing. And you traveled, you got lucky. But I always think people need to travel because I know people that I've grown up with here who they and they're very successful, but they never really left the area. They go to Margate, they go to Stone Harbor. Well, you know what? Or they go to Disneyland if they have kids, Disney World or whatever. I'm like, go somewhere. Go to Boston. Go to England. We're going to Italy next year for our anniversary because my mother-in-law is moving there for 3 months, so we have a place to stay. So it's like, oh, well, wait a second. We can pay for our place to Italy, and we have a place to stay. Well, okay, that's a good deal. But that's the one thing about this area. People just don't leave. And it's nothing wrong with it. I do think everyone has to see other cities just to see and to taste the food and just to see a different culture. And then you come back here and you walk around Center City and you see the Liberty Bell and you see all the good stuff and you see the food. You get sick ass Italian food. You find the great little Irish bars like Moriarty's and McGillen's, or you go to Milk Boy, or you go to all these different places and you see, okay, this is what a city is. And the crime isn't as bad as people say. That's in Center City. It's not bad, but it's always been crappy. So now we have more media about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Florida has never been safe.
Yeah, but that's every city. You can go to any city and be like, oh, it's just as bad here as it is, or good, however you want to look at it. Like it's the same. I don't know. I've never been to any city that I was like, oh, I feel really unsafe right now.
Right.
Parts of a city maybe. But like generally speaking,
it's like going to Camden. Yeah, Camden's not safe. You know that before you go.
Right.
So you know what? You're careful when you go. It's easy as that.
Yeah. Steve, it was been great talking to you.
This is fun.
I'm gonna have to have you back on because I felt like we talked about nothing and everything at the same time.
Yeah, I'll definitely come back. I love coming on shows.
Yeah, and you touched this on this like in the beginning of the show, how like you host all these episodes of a podcast, and it's rare that you're a guest. I feel that too when I get to guest on some of my buddies' shows or people that are reaching out. I'm like, oh yeah, I can sit around and talk even more and not have to edit it. Perfect.
Yeah, and you don't have to ask the questions. You don't have to. You don't have to do heavy. You don't have to do heavy lifting.
Right.
You just show up and
Exactly.
you sit there and someone else put the seat there. You just sit there and talk.
Well, before I let you go officially, do you have any plugs that you want to get out there that people should look at?
Yeah, go to coopertalk.net. Coopertalk.net. You can find over there's 998 episodes there. I don't know when this is going to air. So you go to coopertalk.net or Spotify, iTunes, look up Cooper Talk. If you go to YouTube, search the Coop Tank. That's my business podcast. I bring in business people. We have a hour conversation. It's four of us about the pros and cons of what business, networking, the stuff we don't like. It's like a breakout room where people aren't phony. And depending on when this airs on March 30th, Saturday, March 30th, I will be at Studio 67 in Medford. I will be doing 15 minutes of stand-up, and then Nigel Bennett, who was in an 80s band called The Members and is now in Vibrators V2, and he's actually really close friends with Adam Clayton from U2. He'll be doing a 30 to 35 minute acoustic electric set, and then I'll be sitting down to interview him, telling stories about the 80s music industry. And so you can just email me at coopertalk.net if you want info. It's $20. It's BYOB. It's a great little theater. It holds about 45 people. It will sell out, so check it out.
Awesome. That is fantastic. I believe this might be airing after that,
That's all
but
right. Well, then you missed a good show, people. I'll go next time.
I'll make sure that the previous episodes, I get those plugs in for you.
It's all right. It's all right.
As a future thing. That happens all the time where I have a guest that's they have stuff happening after the release.
I just figured in case you listen. Or if it airs after, just edit that part out. No.
No, we're going to leave it. You missed a great show. What were you doing? Not having future sense here. All right. Thank you once again, Steve.
Thank you, man. You have a good day.
Huge shout out to Steve for being a guest on this show. This came about when sometime in early 2024, I made a post in the Philadelphia Podcasting Society and Creative Arts Alliance group page about getting more guests on the show. And he was the first one, I believe, to jump at the opportunity. And I took that opportunity right away after looking at his website, which at the time was at 998 episodes, something like that, of his podcast. What a legend this guy really is. It really is. If even looking at his page again today to see what he's been up to and the additional like 32 episodes he's done since we last talked, I mean, it really is a who's who of the industry of like music, Hollywood, LA, comedy. It's like a little mini IMDb page. It really, really is. So again, I appreciate Steve for being a guest on this show, and I do wholly apologize to him and all my guests that I have recorded with that have not been posted but are being posted now. Again, what I really like is that a lot of these stories, these conversations that we have with our guests aren't usually there to plug anything important. Obviously, Steve had a show that he plugged, but we even talked about how that wasn't going to be posted when I thought it was going to be posted like a week or two after that show. Here we are, like almost a year later. Regardless, the conversation that we had nearly 9 months ago, let's say, stands today. Everything we talked about is still valid today. So thank you, Steve, for being part of the show. I apologize that it took this long to get up, and I can't wait. I hope we get a chance to speak again at some point as I finish wrapping up here. The plan for everything is awesome going forward. Just to tease this out a little bit, I want to get you out of here. I know we're over an hour, nearly an hour and 15 right now. The plan is probably for the next 2 or 3 weeks, most of January, that is, we're going to get you some episodes that we recorded from last year up on this feed, and you can listen to them and have a great time with these conversations. In the meantime, I'll be sitting down with Mike D'Angelo to record our annual best of the previous year and what we're looking forward to the following year. Last year, which was honestly, I think the episode before this was part 3 of 3 in that same topic for before. We're going to make it much, much shorter. It might not be 45 minutes like I like to try to make these episodes, but it's going to be one part, one of one. Hopefully I'm going to get that in. I'd like to get it in under an hour and a half, right around the time that you're listening to right now, an hour and 10 to an hour and 15 minutes. So we'll be very, very brief with it. Of course, things go off the rails when Mike and I sit down and talk. So while we're catching up, we are going to be sprinkling in new things here and there. And obviously these intros and outros are my time to check in with you guys from the present day that Kev of these interviews had no idea was going to exist right now. Anyway, thank you all for listening. Make sure you follow us on all the social medias, at Real Awesome Pod on Facebook, at Awesome Podcast on Twitter and Instagram, I believe. You know what? What's even better? Just follow me at That Nerdy Kev on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok are the big ones, really. And of course, make sure you subscribe to this podcast. You rate and review it. 5 stars is great. Spread the words. I'll get a much tighter outro at some point here with some pre-recorded stuff to help with these outros. Anyway, thank you all for listening, and I appreciate you all for coming back time in and time again. We've taken plenty of sabbaticals on this show. And in 2025, I'm going to try to take only our summer vacation and winter break, which is much shorter than our summer vacation. But we're going to try our best to get you a weekly episode that is normally scheduled for you guys, save for our summer breaks and whatnot. So thank you once again. And if you have any questions, hit me up on any of those social medias at That Nerdy Kev. Until next time, this is Kev for Everything is Awesome, only on awesomepodcast.com.